Qualifying at Indianapolis. You put it in the race today or you wait till next year.
You know, we went out yesterday and took the best speed we had. You know, that was all we could really get out of the Pontiac. So, you know, we were happy. That was the best we could do, and we knew it. But, you know, there could be some other things we could get into later on if something does happen. But we'll just take it, you know, 5 minutes at a time.
I think it's an ideal opportunity, and you know, this is really the break that I kind of been deserving in the past few years, and you know, I couldn't be in a better opportunity to come into a new game like this to be with somebody better than AJ.
The most frustrating part is to have good equipment and good mechanics and then not being able to find the combination. What it means the same to me as it means to everyone. It's the biggest race in the world, and after being in it one time, you can't get over the fact that you're struggling and your chances of making it are slim.
That was before a late morning practice period today in which Steve turned a 2:07, a change of heart for the former sprint car driver hoping for his second 500-mile race.
I can't explain it. All I know is Huey stayed up all night. He said he didn't sleep at all last night. And this morning I've got a brand new race car that it's not even a distant relative to the one I was driving yesterday. Yesterday it felt like a coffin. Today it feels like a race car.
Chassis and about 8 others are hoping for the final 3 spots in this year's 500 field. We welcome you once again to Indianapolis, Indiana, and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for Day 4 of time trials for the 71st running of the 500-mile race. It's a sunshiny yet hazy day here in Indianapolis. The temperature is up to 86 degrees. There is 49% of humidity, but mostly sunny skies and a 30% chance of rain. Now, as far as the winds are concerned, they're from the southeast, and as you can see, somewhere around 5 miles an hour, sometimes gusting up to about 20 miles an hour. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Bob Jenkins, and welcome to Bubble Day. But before we get to the bumping, we've got 3 more spots to fill in this year's field. Once again, let's review the qualifying procedure here at Indianapolis. There are 4 days of qualifying, and each car is allowed 3 attempts. Each car gets 2 warm-up laps, and his 4-lap average counts. Now, the Day 4 qualifiers line up behind the qualifiers on the first, second, and third days, and of course, they line up by speed. With me is Derek Daly, who put it in the show yesterday quite substantially. But, Derek, you were in a situation a year ago at this time that many of these drivers downstairs are in right now. A lot of emotion trying to get yourself into the 500 field.
Indeed, I was. I'm so happy that I, in fact, had my run yesterday. Steve Chassis, he isn't qualified. I was in his exact position last year with the same team, with the same new march, and we didn't get speed till the last day. And unfortunately, we missed the show because of some rain. So, yes, I was in this exact position last year and didn't like it.
There's a lot of emotion down in the pit area. Let's check some of it out as we go to one of our pit reporters for the afternoon. Here's Larry Newber.
Thank you, Bob. The start-finish line at Indianapolis is 1 yard of bricks, but it's not really the first brick that the cars go over. This is the final inspection area where USAC does the final once over the cars to make sure that they're legal. The bricks here are temporary. They're made out of linoleum, but that's appropriate because once the team pushes the car through this area, all they have said is, we are ready to attempt to qualify for this year's Indianapolis 500-mile race. We will be down here covering that story, and also helping me in the pit area will be my colleague, Gary Lee.
Thank you, Larry. Things have a way of changing here at the Speedway. 25 years ago on Bubble Day, all the non-qualified roadsters would light up nose and tail down there at the north end of the pit area. Drivers would walk along, talk to individual car owners, make deals to drive the cars. And on occasion, frequently, a driver would go out, make a bonsai run, and stick it in the show without practice. Unfortunately, those days are gone because all these cockpits are contoured to the assigned driver. We won't see the ride hopping, and that's something we really miss here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the 4th day of qualifying. Bob?
All right, thank you, Gary. Well, let's review the lineup as it stands right now here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Of course, on the front row, Mario Andretti on the pole, Bobby Rahal in the middle, and Rick Mears also in row number 1. In the second row, it'll be A.J. Foyt, Roberto Guerrero, and Dick Simon. In row number 3, Ari Lyondike, Johnny Rutherford, and Michael Andretti. In the fourth row, Emerson Fittipaldi, Ludwig Heimrath Jr., and Rich Vogler. In row number 5, Jeff McPherson, Scott Brayton, and Jeff Brabham. Then in row number 6, it's Gary Bettenhausen, Danny Sullivan, and Fabrizio Barbaza. In the 7th row, Gordon Johncock, Derek Daly, and Al Unser. In row number 8, Tom Sneva, Al Unser Jr., and Randy Lewis. In the 9th row, Kevin Kogan, Jose Legarza, and Stan Fox. And in the 10th row, Tony Bettenhausen, Sammy Swindell, and Pancho Carter. Pancho Carter withdrew the machine that he qualified a week ago earlier today, and he requalified, as you can see, over 205 miles an hour. Qualifications from Indianapolis being brought to you by Budweiser, Beechwood Age for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you. By Gates, a trusted name in automotive products for over 75 years. And by Kingsford Charcoal. Kingsford burns hot when some others may not. When you're hot, you're hot. The track is yellow. We anticipate qualification attempts in the next 90 minutes. Stay with us as we're live from Indianapolis. We are back at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the track is silent right now. A track inspection is underway prior to a qualification attempt by Steve Chassie. Well, Alan Massengale is also working with us today, in addition to Larry Nuber and Gary Lee. Earlier, these gentlemen followed around a driver who had not yet made this field of the 500.
9:45 a.m., Garage 6. This team has not yet qualified for the 1987 Indianapolis 500-mile race. This is the final day to attempt qualification runs, and many people feel that this team will be one of the candidates, one of the better candidates to make this year's 33-car lineup. Well, they have a driver who is a replacement driver. Phil Kruger has become the driver for this team at the last minute because its primary driver, Dennis Firestone, has crashed twice during the month of May. What we want to do today is to kind of take you through the day, all the trials and tribulations of a team that is struggling to make the 500-mile race. It's not something that happens just in the last hour that you might see on television. It's not only a day-long process, a week-long process, but it's a month, maybe a year-long struggle, isn't it, Phil?
Yeah, especially when you get thrown in your lap at the last moment. We really haven't run this car a lot, and yesterday was the first day we really put all our efforts into it. So we're happy where we are, and we'll just see what today holds.
Now, let's be very, very scientific and specific. What's going on right now? What are the efforts you're making? You're going to go out and practice in just a few minutes here to try and get up to that maybe 205-mile-an-hour speed.
Yeah. It's a big trim exercise here. You can run around with the car stuck down, and as you trim off, when it's stuck down, it's slow. As you trim off more and more downforce, it loosens the car up, picks it up in the straightaway, but you have to hold up in the turns, too. So it's keeping that balance, which is going to give you a 205-plus lap.
Now, by trimming and balance, what are you doing? Are you changing or adjusting the angle of the wings?
Everything. Mechanically, aerodynamically, depending on what the car is telling you. You can't overbalance it aerodynamically for mechanical change, and vice versa. So you have to be very cautious, especially this year.
Well, Phil, we will be watching you throughout the day today and trying to keep tabs on exactly what you're doing. Best of luck.
Thanks very much, Larry.
10:10 a.m. Phil Kruger climbs in for the first time. Phil, crew chief Dave Heap were among the first ready to practice when the track opened in the early morning hours. Qualifying was scheduled to begin at 12 noon. This was a team that felt confident that they will be ready. But at Indianapolis, you never feel completely ready. This team has already rebuilt 2 cars this year. Their primary driver, Dennis Firestone, crashed hard twice. They have had virtually a sleepless month, and this will be a nerve-wracking day. One of Phil's early morning times, 45.4. Progress, but not enough to get into the field. The conversation you're about to hear is only typical of the many that take place all month long for every team.
Ricky hoping to squeeze into the lineup today.
Put up.
Okay, how do you feel? How do you feel that time?
Speed that will pass on to you. The rookie, also
Sam?
a non-qualifier.
Can we take the top body off, and we're going to lean the mixture out a little bit?
Should we wait on these, you think, one run?
It's up to you. Just to see the difference.
What time is it?
It says 25 minutes to 11. Tim, 25 minutes to 11.
like to hold off one run.
We might have been a little quicker the one before, but we're picking up some of the slower cars going down the straight there.
962.
17
Now, Gary Bettenhausen at number
Thanks,
56.
Paul. Did you try fourth gear at all, Phil? Huh? Did you try fourth gear?
No, not yet.
Okay. What revs were you seeing there in fifth then? Still 11.4? Yeah, same as yesterday. If we put these flush wheels on, this should make the car, should get rid of a little bit of the push we've got in it, right? So we're bringing the central pressure
they're not narrower, though.
No, but we're still helping the underbody, which is helping the sensitive point farther forward.
I think it's just the air hitting the sides of the wheel doesn't slow you down. I don't even know if it's a balance thing.
Yeah.
I'll be aware of it. But
Yeah. You might want to bear in mind then that we might, obviously, if we stick in the front end now, we can come off a little bit on the front wing later on. That's going to help the straight line speed a bit.
Although I think we're just a touch understeering right now.
Yeah. Well, that's not bad to be at, anyhow.
No.
You look pretty good coming off 4 again.
Feels all right.
Yeah.
I'm still not happy with my line around here. It's not really the quick way, but...
Phil, it's been about 5 minutes since you brought the car in. Exactly what changes have you made? What changes do you anticipate?
Well, we just rebalanced the car from yesterday. We found a couple things that we weren't happy about and a couple things we weren't sure about. So basically, we've just regrouped and found out where we want to be. And now we're going to start trim off a couple things for a couple more miles an hour, and we could be ready to go by 12 o'clock.
12:15. Phil Kruger is the third car in line to qualify, and the crew is dedicating this run for Dennis, their injured primary driver who is back in the hospital in downtown Indianapolis. Phil Kruger was ready to take the car to the edge. He has been here before, but Phil Kruger was about to take the car past the edge. This was the worst possible scenario that could occur.
Take us back down, we'll have a look in there.
I'll take you all the way any place you want to go.
Anywhere? How about Honolulu right now?
I'll take you all the way home.
I'll
go with you.
We're here with Phil Kruger, who crashed into turn 2 today. And Phil, how do you feel? We talked to you at 9:30 this morning. You had high anticipation. Are you okay? And what happened?
Yeah, I'm fine. Well, I feel horrible, of course. I clipped the short chute wall coming off 3 on the first lap, and must have damaged the tire or the suspension because it just didn't hold up going through 1. That's pretty much it.
Been a tough month all the way around for the Rayner team.
I've never been with a team that's had this much trouble, and I must say the Rayner Garage people have always bounced back, and I'm sure they will again.
Phil Kruger, we hope you're okay, and we look for more racing from you in the future, and that's the way it stands right now outside Hannah Hospital.
It's 12:30 p.m. on the final day of qualifying for this year's Indianapolis 500-mile race. Now, there are several possible scenarios for a team struggling to get in. This is the worst possible one. For this driver, this team, the dream, at least for this year, is now over.
That was the story of one driver here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway who will have to wait till next year. Now, we introduced to you earlier in the show Steve Chassie. He has had major problems today after running 207 miles an hour in practice. He went out onto the track earlier for a qualification attempt and only ran 195. He lost something like 12 miles an hour, but he is back, and we are live right now to bring you a possible qualification attempt by Steve Chassie. He comes down the straightaway now on his first warm-up lap. He'll have to take the green flag next time around.
Steve Chassie has had a very, very difficult time with this new car combination. It's not necessarily the car, it's the car-tire combination and a gremlin that everybody has chased all through this month. And Steve seems to have been at the end of the line as regards finding little development pieces to make this car go faster. Now, almost magically, he pulled out the 207 this morning, which has given him great heart for this run. But believe you me, having waited 2 weeks, and on the last day this is a very, very difficult run for Steve because he knows this is almost his last and only chance.
Derek, when we watched his earlier qualification run, and he is on the green flag, you could tell from this vantage point that the car was just not working in the corners, was pushing pretty badly. We'll watch him here to see if you can detect how that car is handling force now.
You know, it's so difficult sometimes to see how a car handles. You see he's very high in the groove there. This could be reminiscent of the constant push these cars have experienced all month long here. But Steve can pretty much tell himself before he ever sees his pit board the type of speeds he can do, because he can read his rev counter coming off each of the corners. So he will pretty much know himself whether this is going to be the one that's going to put him into the race.
All right, he's about to complete lap number 1 of 4 on his qualification attempt. This is Steve Chassie, who now makes his home in Carmel, Indiana, just on the north side of Indianapolis. The first lap has been completed. We're standing by for the time and speed report, and it is not a good lap at all, although he is better than earlier this morning. It's 197.754 miles an hour. As a matter of fact, Steve Chassie holds a qualification record here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for 8-cylinder unsupercharged engines. That was in 1985. His 1-lap record, 204.443, 4-lap 204.224, but he's not anyways near that. Huey Absalom is the crew chief.
No, don't put it up. It's over 200.
We hear Huey Absalom, his crew chief, tell one of the mechanics, don't put it up, don't put it up. What he meant there was don't put the speed up, don't tell Steve what he's doing, because at below 200 he may in fact pull the car out himself. In fact, that speed was better for the second lap.
He picked it up considerably on lap number 2 for Steve Chassie. It is more than 200 miles an hour. 200.687. His 2-lap average is 199.210. So if he can put together a couple of more laps in excess of 200 miles an hour, he could up that average. And we're listening to Huey Absalom, the crew chief, talk to Steve Chassie.
You see Huey click his watch. In fact, he knows the speed of the car before it comes across the line.
99. Now what do we do?
Third lap, 199.
I think we're just giving the yellow. We got enough time.
Okay, there is the decision by Huey Absalom. The yellow flag is going to come out for Steve Chassie, and he will register attempt number 2 on this car. And his car owner is Lydia Lockery. Let's go down to Gary Lee.
I feel like...
Lydia, this is a first-time effort for you as a car owner. This is 2 strikes against your car. How do you feel now?
Well, I hope that if he takes it, that it holds, and all we can do is just wait and see, but...
They waved the speed off, so now you got to go back, maybe make some... They waved, yes, they waved it off.
All right. I don't know. Maybe in 30 minutes or so, if we still have time, it'll be a little bit faster, but I don't know what to tell you at this point. I still feel we're going to be in the race, though.
She's keeping her fingers crossed, everything she can. There's the lady car owner for Steve Chassie.
Matter of fact, the only female car owner here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway this year. So after 2 laps at 199 and 1 above 200, Steve Chassie is yellow flagged. Another car is ready to go, though. We'll be back for that run after this.
IndyCar races.
Time trials, day number 4, Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Trim is a word we've heard used a lot during this month of May here in Indianapolis. Alan Massengale with more on that story.
We're here in the garage area, and all during the past couple of weeks, heard the drivers talk about trimming the car out. We're going to try to help you understand what that means. On the front here, you see the front wing. You see that adjustment screw. That screw helps you pivot the wing up or down like this. The more up it gets, the more downforce you have, but you also get drag, and that's not good. You want to try to find a happy medium between drag and downforce. You see the shape of the car, very aerodynamically sound. As we get to the back wing, we're going to explain how you trim this one out. Now, this one is fixed. You can either move it up or down using those screws on the back of the transmission, but the way to increase the downforce is using these gurney strips. You can see on the edge here, this one is higher. That gives you more downforce. This is lower. You try to find a happy medium there as well, and you see where it sits on the back wing. Now let's go back to Bob.
Thank you, Alan. Well, of course, the term trim is used quite a bit when you're flying an airplane, and when you trim out a plane, you get it so it'll basically fly itself. You don't have to hold onto the controls. I guess it's about the same thing in race cars.
It is a very, very similar thing. The only problem that has arisen when people begin to trim these cars out is the sudden breakaway of the front end that has caused probably 85% of the serious accidents that happened here this month. So the ideal situation is to get rid of that wing and to go down the straight as quickly as possible, but it hasn't quite worked this year like it has in the past.
Rocky Moran is a veteran road racer. He doesn't have a whole lot of experience on the ovals. However, this car has quite a bit of history to it because it's Bobby Rahall's backup car from last year. And Rocky Moran is trying to put it in the show. His speeds have not been all that particularly good. I think he has registered about a 200-mile-an-hour lap, but it's going to be quite a feat for Rocky Moran to put this car in the show. By the way, the owner of this car is George Walter from Dayton, Ohio, who was a car owner from a long time ago and has come onto the scene once again. The green flag comes out. George Walter, of course, the father of Salt Walter, who competed here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway a few times. He's into turn number 1 and on his first lap of qualifying, Rocky Moran.
Not fast enough for what we can see. Looks very unspectacular, which, in fact, very, very close to the wall as he came off turn 2 there. So he is pushing it as hard as he can, but we see the speed of 198.882. I don't see how they can accept this run because there is another just over an hour left of qualifying, so I don't see how they can accept a run of 198 miles an hour being the first lap.
Is it your opinion right now that we will have at least one in the field under 200 miles an hour?
I don't think so, because at the moment we have the 2 Foyt cars, which are well capable of doing above 200 miles an hour. And Davy Jones is well able to do that speed, as he demonstrated doing it 209 earlier on. Now we see a second lap is 200, just above 200, 200.044. I still don't think it's close enough for them to be in the comfort zone, so we'll have to see what the crew chief, what decision he will make, whether he'll give the green or the yellow.
It's just about the same situation that Steve Chassis was in a moment or two ago. There is the 2-lap average, 199.461, so Rocky could move it up to above 200 with a couple of more good laps, but we'll just have to wait and see. Dwayne Sweeney displays the white flag, and Rocky Moran has one more lap to go on his qualifying run. It'll be decision time next lap.
Just because he got the white flag, that doesn't mean he will take this last lap, because his crew chief times him coming off turn 4. We see the third lap was in fact 199.627. So this is not quick enough. Now his crew chief knows his speed as he comes through turn 4. Therefore he can wave the flag between turn 4 and the start-finish line. And I think that's in fact what he's going to do.
All right, we'll see. Steve Chassie's crew chief waved the yellow flag when Steve was out a few minutes ago, and let's see if it happens for Rocky Moran. Here he comes off of corner number 4, and they are not giving him the yellow flag. They are going to let him complete the qualification run, and we have now our 31st qualifier for this year's 500-mile race, but the average is going to be below 200 miles an hour. All right, let's go to Larry Newber, who is with Rocky Moran's crew chief.
Bob, as soon as Rocky comes around, they're going to run down the reception area. This will have to be quick. Why did you decide to go with 200, Dwayne?
That's as fast as it'll go, and we wouldn't have another shot in the line anyway.
Do you think it'll hold?
I don't know. We'll see.
Best of luck. Congratulations for now.
Thank you.
All right, the 4th lap was 198.085, and the 4-lap 10-mile qualification average for Rocky Moran, 199.157, and that is now the slowest in the field at this point.
What he meant by we wouldn't have another shot at it because the line is too long, what he means by that is if he didn't take that run, by the time he goes back to into the line, there wouldn't be enough time to run all the cars through to give him another shot. So he has just taken a gamble that nobody else will get sufficient speed to put him out. That's a gamble, but in a way, there's nothing else they could do.
And that's the situation on the fourth day of time trials in Indianapolis. It is pretty much a gamble all day long. Dominic Dobson, another rookie, is on the racetrack right now. Dominic, born in Germany, has been once again more prominent on the road courses. However, he was the 1986 Kart Rookie of the Year. And you'll notice perhaps a similarity between the paint scheme on this car and the paint scheme on Michael Andretti's, and that's because this is the car that Michael Andretti drove last year in Indianapolis.
Dominic is a full week behind everybody here at the Speedway. He didn't arrive ready to go at all on the first week. In fact, his car never even took to the track at all the first week. That is a very big disadvantage for anybody, particularly a rookie, to come here. He has a new team. They're running a limited effort themselves here this year. He blew an engine yesterday, which in fact kept him off the track for a long, long time. So if Dominic Dobson makes this, it'll be a very good effort on his part, because the first 2 or 3 days that he spent here was in fact going through his rookie test. They're very careful here to make sure he did do that, do several 10-lap runs at consistent speeds, watched by veteran drivers. So Dominic Dobson really has quite a bit to do to put this car on the show here.
He exploded an engine big time yesterday. Here's the green flag, and Dominic Dobson is on his qualification run. His blown engine occurred right at the start-finish line, and there was a huge puff of smoke come from that car. He did get it off the racetrack rather early, so it prevented a lot of oil from being laid down. But now a new engine in that car, and Dominic Dobson is on his way now. As far as the bump list is concerned, Sammy Swindell, who came into today on the bubble, so to speak, at 201.8, is no longer on the bubble because Rocky Moran just qualified at under 200 miles an hour at 199.157. That means that Rocky is now going to be the first to be bumped.
Dobson looks as if he has a nice smooth line just below the white line. It's very difficult for us to tell from here what the speed is. We'll have that in just a couple of seconds, but it looks like an unspectacular run, which, as I said, is very difficult to tell whether it's slow or fast.
Rocky Moran, by the way, qualified the 10th 1986 March in this year's 500 field. The speed for Dominic Dobson on lap number 1 is over 200, 200.463, and he came close to that wall coming out of 2, didn't he, Derek?
He came as close as he will ever want to come to touching the walls here. That was a very, very high view coming off turn 2. Now, he'll be very aware of that when he enters turn 2 the next time, so it may cause him to back off a little bit, but hopefully his tires will begin to heat up a little bit better. Now, if he can push this up into the 201 range, well, then he won't be the last man in. He won't be the man on the bubble, because Rocky Moran will. So he'll be looking for a high 200 or a 201.
Into turn number 1, and Dominic Dobson's speed on lap number 2 is considerably better than on lap number 1, and so he upped it by almost 2 miles an hour, 202.052. And his average of 2 laps, 201.254. So it's looking pretty good for Dominic Dobson.
That's very good. Now what he's got to do is just stay very, very consistent. We saw the picture of him coming through turn 2 that time, and he was on the outside groove, but not as high as he was the time before.
Dominic started racing Formula Fords in 1977, ran his own car in 11 Formula Atlantic races in 82, began driving Indy cars in 1985. Lap number 3 is complete. The white flag has been shown to Dominic Dobson. He is on his final lap of qualifying now. Time and speed report for lap number 3. Again, it's above 200 miles an hour. It's 200.929 for a 3-lap average of 201.146. But that third lap was considerably under lap number 2. So you were perhaps right, Derek, when you indicated that he might back off because of his high line out of turn number 2 a lap ago.
I think they will take it. They have no real choice at this stage. I think this is the fastest he's run all month. We see him coming off turn 4 here now. He hasn't got the yellow flag. They're going to take it. I think he may just be in the show at that.
And Dominic Dobson becomes our 32nd qualifier of the year, and he becomes the 7th rookie in the Indianapolis 500-mile field for 1987 at least at this point. We've got lots more activity for you as qualifications are underway at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
At a speed of 213.
Davy Jones is on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for a possible qualification attempt. You'll recall yesterday he took the green flag and got very high coming out of turn number 4. In fact, brushed the wall coming out of turn number 4. And went off the qualification attempt at that time, but he's back now. And this was earlier today as car owner A.J. Foyt was in the pace car with Davy Jones, giving him an idea of where A.J. runs the groove here in Indianapolis and giving Davy some, I'm sure, much appreciated pointers. There is A.J. live as he is at the north end of the racetrack on pit road, watching his driver on his first warm-up lap, Davy Jones.
An unusual thing I see on Davy Jones' car is 4 new tires. This is the first car that I've seen qualify this month on brand new tires. Now this was a thing that Rick Mears did last year to get the final little piece out of the car, but the tires have been difficult to handle here on these cars this year, so this is the first time I've seen a driver attempt to qualify on a brand new set of tires. You'll see there's a payoff for Davy Jones.
Is it better to qualify on tires that are already broken in, or
this year, for some reason, about between 5 and 8 laps, then have the tires cool and cure always seem to be better.
And the green flag is out for Davy Jones. The sponsor on this car is Uno. You can see the word right there on the nose of the car. They also sponsored a rookie who came here a few years ago and made a big splash in at least Indianapolis, although he preferred instead to go NASCAR racing. We're referring, of course, to Tim Richmond. Tim started, by the way, on the outside of the front row in the Winston today, which was being held in Charlotte, North Carolina. That race, by the way, was won by Dale Earnhardt. The Winston won by Dale Earnhardt, and the Winston Open was won by Buddy Baker in Charlotte this afternoon. Davy Jones on the qualification run, coming off of turn number 4 and about to complete his first lap.
Davy Jones has done a very good job here because he's never been on a super speedway before. He came here with quite a bit of pressure because driving for A.J. Foyt, I think, is pressure in itself, but he has slowly increased his speed every day and done a super job.
Wow, listen to this. Davy Jones, 207.135. Well, the pointers and the little talk from A.J. Foyt earlier today must have paid off. Let's hope that Davy can keep it together for 4 laps, because yesterday he also turned in a very fine speed on his first lap, and that's when he ran into trouble at the north end of the racetrack. But Davy Jones is apparently on his way to making this year's 500 field off of turn number 4 once again. This will be our 33rd qualifier.
With an opening lap that fast, Davy doesn't really need to stretch himself any more than he's already done. The car can do the rest now. He knows the speed is in the car, so he's just waiting for his second lap time speed. In fact, it is a little bit faster.
It is 207.455 miles an hour. The 2-lap average, 207.294, and a good run underway by Davy Jones as A.J. Foyt looks on. Now, despite the fact that he's running 207 miles an hour, he's not as fast as a couple of other rookies, Fabrizio Barbaza, who qualified yesterday, and Ludwig Heimrath Jr., who got into the field yesterday.
We see the boss himself giving the pit board a smile on his face, and he chews the gum and he wipes his brow. He's brought this, I would say, almost kid along, because Davy's probably the youngest guy here at the moment, and in fact his speed has even gone up again.
Holy mackerel, he is up to almost 109 miles an hour. It's 208.715. The average is 207.766 for 3 laps. He's got a half a lap to go, and this could be Davy Jones' real fine entrance into this year's 500-mile field.
Safety through turn 4, no dramatics, nothing. He's on his way home. He's in the field.
And there's the checkered flag, and Davy Jones has qualified. Let's go to Larry Newber.
Very happy. It's been a hard day. Yeah, the boys worked hard. I'm thrilled to death for him.
The talks must have worked, AJ.
Oh, I think so.
You got one more Ziggy to go?
You want to take with George? Huh?
Ziggy to go yet?
No, I'm just thrilled to death for him. Just thrilled to death. I'll stay here with George. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk to you later, AJ.
Davy Jones' final lap was his fastest, 209.176. The 4-lap average is 208.117. We have a full field for this year's 500-mile race. Now, the bumping begins at Indianapolis, and George Snyder rolls onto the racetrack. We'll be back right after this.
We are back live at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and what a gathering we have down here now, congratulating Davy Jones. Our personal congratulations. Obviously, that talk this morning helped out.
It did. You know, I went out yesterday morning, I ran a 208, and when I went out for the qualifying attempt, the car was real tail happy. And ever since then, I just really couldn't mentally get it back together, and it took a lot of coaching and a lot of just going off in the corner with AJ and relearning it, and it's really worked out well.
What did AJ tell you in that ride this morning in the pace car?
Basically, you know, the turn-in points and where you should be on the power, and basically how the car works through the corner being on the power. And it's really the hesitancy of staying off the power through the corner is what really makes the car squirrely, and that's probably what I was doing wrong.
Davey, look around. This is Indianapolis. You're in the show.
Thanks very much. I just like to really thank AJ a lot because he did it. You know, he's really worked well and he's been real patient with the whole thing. And just thanks, Tony.
The big grin from the latest rookie qualifier, Davy Jones.
Not only is he the latest rookie qualifier, he is the fastest rookie qualifier in the field. Fabrizio Barbazzo was at 208.038, but now Davy Jones' average of 208.117 makes him the fastest rookie in this year's 500-mile race.
George Snyder now in Foyt's final car, the fourth entry, the one that isn't quite in the show yet. Snyder did have this car running fast enough earlier on in the week, but they did have some engine problems. So now this is his go, and his first lap, in fact, was fast enough, 204.834. Drops down a little bit for his second lap. We'll just get a second lap speed now. It's in the 203-mile range, but that is good enough to get him in the race.
There it is, 203.929, average 204.381. Rocky Moran is on the bubble. He will be bumped by George Snyder if Snyder turns in a four-lap average better than 199.157, and he is well on his way to doing that right now. By the way, George is driving a V6 Chevy, and this is the last attempt on this car. He's had 2 strikes against him, and this is the third. The white flag comes out. Now, you probably heard us refer to throughout the last couple of weekends about the Chevy Ilmore engine, but this is not an Ilmore at all. This is a stock block, a V6 Chevy stock block that Snyder is attempting to qualify right now. And the third lap is down considerably, 201.948, but still it's a good 3-lap average of 203.5 and much better than Rocky Moran's 199.157.
Dropping down steadily, but still reasonably safe to get in the field. I think Rocky Moran will definitely be out. If Snyder doesn't push him out, I think Ed Pym could well do it. And Ed Pym, in fact, is the next one in line to run just after George Snyder. But we'll get George Snyder's final lap as he takes the checkered flag here in just a couple of seconds.
George Snyder qualifies. Here's Larry.
Your 30th race. Looks like you got 4 cars in. Do you feel safe about George?
Well, I do, yeah. He's worked hard. He didn't have time. I just think everything's wonderful. I got to go down and see Davey.
Okay, AJ.
So there is perhaps the car owner with the most cars in this year's 500-mile field, and the fourth lap was 202.088, and George Snyder qualifies at 203.192. Rocky Moran is bumped from the field. Ed Pym is next to go out for qualifications at Indianapolis. All right, we're back at Indianapolis, and Ed Pym is on the racetrack for a qualification attempt. He has already taken the green flag and is on lap number 1 of 4. Dominic Dobson is on the bubble. He will be the next to go. The speed that Ed Pym is shooting for is 201.240. He must turn in a 4-lap average better than that to bump Dominic Dobson out of the lineup. After Dominic Dobson, Sammy Swindell would be on the bubble as it stands right now. And we understand that Sammy Swindell has been at least talking with the Machinists Union to possibly qualify Pancho Carter's car that he flipped early in the month. Now, Ed Pym's first lap speed was 198.2921, and that is not good enough to bump Dominic Dobson.
I think Ed is in trouble here. In fact, you see the car give a little wiggle as it comes through turn 3 there. I think Ed is in trouble here because he's too good an open track driver to make it easy on the first lap. And if he can only do 198, I don't think he can put a 4-lap average together that's going to be fast enough to put him in the race at the moment.
Ed Pym has started in 2 500-mile races previous to this year, in 1985 and in 1986. And the second lap speed is slower than the first. Not by very much, but a little bit. 199.526. So the 2-lap average is 199.223.
This, in fact, is Ed Pym's car that he drove here last year, which was the dark red car in the Skoal colors. It's still in the Skoal colors this year, but a different color scheme. But in fact, this is the car that he drove. In fact, I may have driven this car in Mid-Ohio when I filled in for Ed.
Okay,
last year.
The yellow flag has been displayed, so Ed Pym comes off the qualification attempt and will put it in the line and probably try to look for some more miles an hour and perhaps do it again later this afternoon.
Of course, there isn't much time for him to get back into the line and make enough adjustments to make that car go a little bit faster. The problem with making adjustments at the speedway is ideally you need some practice laps to prove whether it's good or bad. So it's a bit of a risky time for Ed Pym at this time.
Real disappointment for Ed, who has competed in 23 IndyCar races. And now going on to the racetrack is Rick Miskiewicz, who will be trying to put that car in the starting lineup, number 97.
Another driver who's using the same technique as Davy Jones used on running new tires. Let's get down to Gary Lee, who's with George Snyder.
Well, Ziggy, it's not uncommon for you to qualify on the last day, but doggone it, you had a shot last week to stick it in the show, and the tire went down on you.
Well, we did. In fact, we had 2 chances. We went out on our first attempt, and we had almost a 206 average that we were shooting at. And we decided, being second out, that we wouldn't take anything less than a 208. So AJ yellow flagged us, and the next time we went out, we were running good. We had around 2.7 average, and I had a tire go down and spun it coming off 2.
Of course, you two guys have been teammates for so many years, but you've got a couple of real fine rookies on the team this year.
Oh, yeah, we got some real good ones. So, Stan, he did one hell of a job. He was kind of a quiet guy, and he didn't say much, or they didn't say much, and he snuck her right in there. And Davey did a hell of a job, too.
One more race. Congratulations.
Thank you.
George Snyder has qualified for the middle of row number 11 at 203.192. Rick Miskiewicz is on the track for his qualification run. We'll have it in a moment. Let's review for you now rows 9, 10, and 11 as they stand right now. Kevin Kogan, Jose Legarza, and Stan Fox are in row 9. In the 10th row, Tony Bettenhausen, Sammy Swindell, and Davy Jones. And in the 11th row is Pancho Carter, George Snyder, and Dominic Dobson. And again, Dobson on the bubble at 201.240. How does Dominic feel about being on the bubble? Well, here's Gary.
Most race drivers in the country would envy a rookie here at the Speedway during the month of May. They would not envy you now. How does it feel to be on the bubble?
Well, there's certainly been it's been a difficult week for us. We've had a lot of trouble and a lot of pressure. Everyone's worked real hard. So all I can say is right now I'm keeping my fingers crossed, and I think the crew is too.
How are the track conditions?
Well, they weren't bad. It's been hot and greasy all week. Having not run here before, I really have no comparison, but the car was sliding around on me, certainly in my qualifying run. It was the fastest I had gone all month long.
Was this lady as difficult to tame as you had perceived before rookie orientation?
Yeah, or more so. I've never done anything in my life that could equal this.
Right now it's just a matter of waiting because there's nothing else you can do.
Right, Rick Miskiewicz is out right now, and we just hope that he's fast, but not as fast as us. You know, like I said, we completed our rookie test on Tuesday, so I probably got a total of about 400 miles here. And Jim Ward, my car owner, and Jim Campbell of Intersport have all worked so hard to just get us here. I really hope we can stay.
He looks so calm on the outside. I know he's churning internally, Bob.
Well, Dominic, for the moment, is safe because Rick Miskiewicz's first lap was only 198.177, and he came awfully close to that wall coming on the 2 again.
If Rick Miskiewicz pushes this any harder, he's going to be in the wall because that was a very, very squirrely first lap at 198 miles an hour. And then on the second lap, we saw him almost touch that wall coming off turn 2. So Rick Miskiewicz, who hasn't really had speed in this car all month, is trying to push this car as hard as it'll go. I just hope he doesn't go over the limit.
Rick Miskiewicz a couple of days ago during a practice session spun in turn number 2 and made contact with the inside wall, damaging the rear of the car, the right side pod. The and they have it fixed again, and here he is on the qualification run. Now, the second lap is faster than the first, but not all that great. It's certainly not fast enough to bump Dominic Dobson. The second lap is 198.794 miles an hour.
Dobson is still safe as regards this run here. I hope he stays in. If he does, the next one is Sammy Swindell, and really that is almost a favorite of a lot of people here now. In fact, we see the yellow flag. The run is waved off. I don't know whether they'll get another run because there's only 35 minutes left. I'm not sure that if he gets in the end of the line whether they can get another run or not.
Well, Dominic Dobson breathes a sigh of relief as he is still in this year's field. The run by Rick Miskiewicz has been called off, and so he will return to the pit area, and it appears as if the next driver to go onto the racetrack, yes, it's going to be Steve Chassie, whom we have sort of chronicled all day long. 207 miles an hour on a practice session, but dropping about 12 miles an hour during his actual qualification attempt earlier today. So Steve Chassie goes back out onto the racetrack and hopes this time that he can find the speed necessary to put him in this year's 500-mile field.
This is definitely frustration personified for Steve Chassie, because he talks to other drivers. They all tell him little bits about what they do in their cars. He's had a lot of information on how to set this car up, little things to try, and nothing has quite settled this car down to Steve's liking, and he's good enough a driver not to overextend himself trying to make that car do something the car's not capable of doing at this moment. So Steve Chassie did take a run earlier on, wasn't happy, had 207 miles an hour during practice this morning, but has made some adjustments, come through the line again, and now this is probably, I think, his last chance.
I think you're right. The green flag waves and Steve Chassie is on the run. You know, it's inconceivable to me, Derek, and I'm sure it isn't to you, but it's inconceivable to me that a driver could lose 12 miles an hour in the space of 2 hours, because at 2:07 came at about 10 minutes after 10. I looked at my watch and I said then that I bet that Steve Chassie wished it were 10 after 12 and he was qualifying at that time. But in that 2-hour period, 12 miles an hour.
I can guarantee you his driving style didn't change in that 2 hours. It's definitely in the car. These cars are so incredibly sensitive that if they made small shock absorber changes or ride height adjustments, even a 1/16 of an inch variance, they will have changed the handling of that car. Of course, once the handling of the car changes to even a little bit worse than what it was, of course the driver then loses his confidence, doesn't want to charge into the apex of the corner because of the 23 or so accidents we had earlier on this month.
Uh-oh, Chassie has done it. It's good enough to bump himself into the starting lineup if he can continue at this pace. The first lap is 2:01.934. The bump speed is 2:01.240.
We have to wait for the second lap because a lot of drivers have picked up speed on the second and third lap. Some people have dropped. Steve Chassie, hopefully, will heat those tires up nicely, gain grip, and just push that time into the 2:02. If he does, he's safe. If he doesn't, I don't think he'll make it.
The Vietnam veteran and former model here in the Indianapolis area has just taken the green flag to complete lap number 2, and there is Dominic Dobson as he sweats it out. And the second lap is a little bit slower, but it is still good enough to bump Dominic Dobson. Lap number 2, 2:01.572. The average 2:01.7. Remember, he needs a 2:01.2.
It's only just good enough at the moment. He's got 2 more laps to go. You see, he goes right under the yellow line there. That's because of a push condition in the car. The handling is going away on this car. I think, Steve, very hard to predict, and particularly when you look at television, but that didn't look as good a lap to me.
I agree with you. He didn't come out of the corner nearly as quickly as he did on the previous lap, as Huey Absalom is looking on and hoping that his driver can put the speed together. And by golly, the third lap was quicker, Derek. It is above 202 miles an hour. In fact, it's almost 203.
Well, that's good, because he's just been below the line again at 2. So, in fact, he's looking for grip wherever he can find it on the track. If he can maintain this pace, Dominic Dobson, we see him in an inset piece, may not make this race.
But that, if things things continue the way they have the last 3 laps, if he's in this range, it will mean that Steve Chassis moves to the bubble. So he bumps, but then stands to be bumped himself. The checkered flag comes out, and Steve Chassis has qualified for this year's 500-mile race. Let's check to see, first of all, if he bumped him. Yes, he did. The 4th lap was his best. Here's Gary.
I don't think we really have to ask because the expression tells it all, but how do you feel?
Well, I'm happy we made it this far. Obviously, I'm very disappointed we didn't make it in the race. But like I said, as a rookie here and a late start, I'm glad to be a part of this, and I just hope I can come back here as many years as A.J. Foyt has.
A good sportsman. Dominic Dobson.
And a rookie that has many years ahead of him. So the bumping has began. A lot of activity on this Sunday afternoon in Indianapolis. Bob Jenkins, Derek Daly, Alan Massengale, Larry Nuber, and Gary Lee at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and it's bubble day, as you can see by the animated sign there. And on the bubble right now is Sammy Swindell. We'll tell you before the sign shows you, but Sammy Swindell is on the bubble. That last lap by Steve Chassis was very critical because it was 203.5 miles an hour. That put the 4-lap average to 202.4, and that means that Swindell is now in the bubble, and Chassis is next on the bubble. Let's go to Gary.
Chassis, Steve, you never said earlier that you felt the pressure, but I know you had to be churning inside. How's it feel now?
Well, if that holds, it feels good, but that was one hell of a ride, I tell you. I never had to work so hard in my life to keep one of these things on the groove, and actually I cut all the corners trying to keep enough room to keep the throttle on.
A lot of pushing.
A lot of pushing, but I was all 4 wheels at one time under the yellow line, I think. Just trying to get enough room on the exit to keep the throttle down. But, you know, the United Oil, the Life Indiana car, at least we're in the race for now. You know, all these guys work their rear ends off, so this makes it all worth it. But it's tough still. You know, that was a hard one to do.
Lydia, here's the car owner. 3rd time was a charm this afternoon. A big hug for Steve Chassis. Lydia, how do you feel?
I love it. I love it. I love it.
There it is, a rookie car owner, a veteran driver. Congratulations.
Thanks, Gary.
You know, one thing always interests me, Derek. Race drivers are known as, or supposedly known as, macho men, but a lot of them, when they come in after qualifying and having accomplished what they worked so hard for all month long, you don't have to be tears.
That was an emotional interview by Steve Chassis. Steve could actually hardly catch his breath to get the words out, and I know how hard he had to drive that, because you hear the expression, how long can you hold your breath? Well, when you've got to do 4 laps around here, sometimes you may hold your breath that long.
Well, Ed Pym goes on to the racetrack for another qualification attempt, and I believe this may be our final qualifier of the month. I don't see anybody in the qualification line at the moment, although Rick Miskiewicz's car, as the green flag comes out for Ed Pym, Miskiewicz's car has been taken back into the garage area to refuel for a possible attempt. But he certainly will have to find a lot of speed before he can bump himself into the field, and so will Ed Pym, for that matter.
Somebody has to be on the bubble, and it's really a shame that it's Sammy Swindell, because the Pontiac engine, the normally aspirated V8 that he brought here, has almost become a crowd favorite. It's the only thing that makes what you call decent race car noise as it goes by. They spent the first week rebuilding the engines, and I went over to have a look at the car, and actually the engineering is very, very nice on the car. John Butera has really put a very big effort into producing a car that he had hoped would stay in the race, but Ed Pym, if he has made some good adjustments that work, he should find the speed in this car to knock Sammy Swindell out.
We'll know in just a few moments. The first lap speed report is coming in. It's good enough. Ed Pym's first lap of qualifying is more than 202 miles an hour. It's 202.744, so he has found a lot of speed in that car.
Ed Pym is very capable of doing a white knuckle run, which I'm sure this is. We saw him a little bit squirrely on that first lap. We'll watch him very carefully as he goes through this second lap, but at the moment he does look good, and if he can build up the speed, Ed Pym is going to put Sammy Swindell back in the transporter.
Second lap completed. There are a lot of sprint, midget, and dirt track racing fans out there throughout the United States that are hoping for Sammy Swindell. It's not over yet, fans, because we understand that Sammy Swindell might get into another Machinist Union car and try to qualify it this afternoon. So we'll have to hold on, but look at this. The second lap is faster than the first. It's 203.869, and the two-lap average is 203.3. The bubble speed is 201.840.
Ed Pym, as I said before, will know his time by the amount of revs he has coming off these corners. It's pretty easy for the drivers to be able to tell whether they're going fast enough or not. And of course, his crew chief knows the lap speed as it comes through turn 4. That's how he decides whether to give the yellow flag or not before the driver takes the checkered flag at the end of the 4-lap run.
Former Super V champion, and his third lap of qualifying is slower than the second, but faster than the first. It's 203.169. The 3-lap average is 203.2, so it's going to take almost a disaster here for Ed Pym in his final half a lap to not get him into the final final lineup for this year's race. Here he is off of turn number 4, Ed Pym from Dublin, Ohio, which of course is the same hometown that defending champion Bobby Rahal is from. Dwayne Sweeney waves the checkered flag, and Ed Pym is in. He raised his hand right at the starting line saying, "Whew, I'm glad that's over." Let's check the 4th lap time and speed report. It is again in the 203-mile-an-hour range. It's 203.358, and Ed Pym has bumped his way into the starting lineup with an average of 203.284. Sammy Swindell now has been bumped from the lineup, and on the bubble at the moment is Steve Chassie, who just qualified. We'll be right back. We have our very expensive wind meter set up in turn number 3 to give you an idea of the wind conditions in various locations of this racetrack, and Alan Massengale is in turn number 3 to give you a further report on the wind speeds and direction.
We're standing in turn 4. As the temperatures begin to fall today, you can see that the wind is kicking up. Now, this helps the drivers coming down the back straight, but as they approach turn 3, it can be tricky because this is an open expanse. Unlike the grandstand area protecting turn 1, the wind can whip right through here. We'll be watching this area all day.
Well, you can't keep up with Alan. I thought he was in turn number 3, but he's in turn number 4. Anyway, he brings us that report, and there you can see the wind speed. It's, again, averaging around 5 miles an hour, although sometimes the gusts get up to around 10 or 12 miles an hour. Ed Pym has come in for, after his qualification run. Let's go to Gary.
Well, the First Lady and Nancy, the wife, to make the congratulatory hug and kiss before you get the helmet off. You did it, but how did you do it?
Well, I held my breath for 4 laps, let me tell you. Oh, my God. The car wasn't handling all that good, but I knew it was our last shot. We were down to our 3rd try and late in the day, so we just sort of let it hang out there, and I'm just glad that hopefully it'll, nobody else will go out and bump us.
Was it a pushing condition?
Well, it pushed, then it got loose, and then it got it did a little everything.
Have you ever worked that hard before in qualifying?
Never. I never, I see how both sides live now. Last year we came here, we warmed up at 207, and, we qualified in the top 10 on the first day, and now here I am on the last row in the last day, so I've seen it all, and I'll take the other way anytime.
And only 20 minutes to wait it out now.
Well, yeah, it'll be a long 20 minutes, but I'm not, are we on the bubble?
No.
Okay.
It appears secure at this point.
All right, well, that's good. I think I'll go back and drink a beer.
That's Ed Pym from Dublin, Ohio, who is now in this year's 500-mile field. At the moment, he is inside of row number 11. Rick Muskiewicz will be the next to attempt to qualify once again. We'll be back for his run in a moment from the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. It's bubble day at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and we have about 17 or so minutes remaining in this year's qualifying procedure here at Indianapolis, and Rick Muskiewicz will be the next to try to bump his way into the starting lineup. The most recent to do so was Ed Pym. Our congratulations to the McLaren team, Alain Prost and Stefan Johansson. They were 1 and 2 in the Formula One race today at Spa in Belgium. And A lot of the Formula One drivers, of course, know about Indianapolis, and we asked several of them before the race in Spa today about running Indianapolis.
I think we take enough risks driving Formula One cars, and all I know at Indy with the oval circuits, you have quite high speed with the wall beside you, and that doesn't normally give you a safe feeling.
I fancy a go. That'd probably scare the hell out of me, but I suspect it's almost like starting all over again, so I'd have to go and do a lot of learning before we were frightening Mario Andretti and the likes.
Why not? Maybe one day I'll go there and do it.
You know, I think I'm in a situation where I would like to go and do karts at some time in my life, but I'd have to start negotiations mid-season so that I can, you know, get a chance with a good team.
Well, I like it enough, but I don't like the bloody yellow flag, you know. And it's something that I don't think it's fair. With the yellow flag, everybody closed down again. I think if your ball's out and get a lead 10 seconds, and then after come the yellow flag, I don't think it's fair. That's the only thing I don't like from Indianapolis.
I never saw it. I won't go one time there, and I hope I can race one time in Indy.
I wouldn't mind being there watching him, but I'd be a bit apprehensive being in one of those cars going 230 miles an hour. I have a lot of respect for those guys, and I think one day I'll do that. But before I do it, I want to do a whole winter's testing. I want to have a good program. I did a kart race last year in Miami, and I enjoyed it. And who knows, I might do that soon. But that's not one of the places you just wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to go at Indy. I mean, it takes a lot of training, a lot of specialization.
I think Mario is on pole position again. I don't know how many times he's been on pole, but congratulations to him. And yeah, I look forward to sort of doing some American racing.
And there are the top 6 finishers in the Grand Prix of Belgium today. Alain Prost wins his 27th victory, and that ties him with Jackie Stewart. Johansson was second. Andrea de Cesaris in a good run was third. Eddie Cheever, Satoru Nakajima, who is surprising a lot of people, another car that Senna drives, the Honda and the Lotus, and René Arnoux was sixth. Well, who better to speak about the comparison between Formula One and Indy cars than you, Derek Daly, because you have driven both.
From what I remember, not a lot of drivers actually expressed desire to come and do Indianapolis. But recently, because kart has got so strong and because Indianapolis has got so big in the last 4 or 5 years relative to what it was, I mean, it's now international, whereas at one stage it was very much domestic. I think more and more people now see it as something they would like to do before they finish their careers.
Well, Rick Miskiewicz is still in the technical inspection area, so it will be a few more minutes before his car is officially presented for a qualification attempt. We'll be back in Indianapolis in just a moment. Rick Miskiewicz's car with him in it being pushed now to the qualifying line, and he'll receive instructions once again from Chief Steward Tom Benford, and then will be allowed onto the racetrack for another qualification attempt. Steve Chassis is on the bubble at 2:02.488. He is back right now in the press conference room that the United States Auto Club and the Indianapolis Motor Speedway provide for members of the media. He is explaining right now how he feels about being on the bubble. Let's review the lineup as it stands right now, and it could be the final lineup. Mario Andretti, Bobby Rahal, and Rick Mears in row 1. Second row, Foyt, Guerrero, and Simon. In row number 3, Lyondike, Rutherford, and Michael Andretti. Fourth row, Fittipaldi, Heimrath, and Vogler. In the fifth row, Jeff McPherson, Scott Brayton, and Jeff Brabham. Row 5, Gary Ventenhausen, Danny Sullivan, and Fabrizio Barbaza. In row number 7, John Cock, Daly, and Unser. Row 8, Sneva, Unser Jr., and Randy Lewis. In the 9th row, Kevin Cogan, Jose Letarza, and Stan Fox. 10th row, Tony Ventenhausen. Then Davy Jones and Pancho Carter. And in the 11th row, Ed Pym, George Snyder, and Steve Chassis. Rick Miskiewicz's car has been pushed off, and he goes on to the speedway once again for a qualification attempt. Well, there are several people that we would like to thank for our first live telecasting for the Indianapolis Motor Speedway time trials, as Rick Miskiewicz is in turn number 1. ABC Sports has provided provided just a tremendous amount of help and support to us in our coverage of these time trials, so our hats off to them. And next Sunday at 11 o'clock Eastern Time, you'll be able to watch the Indianapolis 500-mile race live on ABC, except in the Indianapolis area. And of course, we'd like to thank the members of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway family for their cooperation, and finally some local television stations who spend an entire month out here catching accidents should they happen, and they have provided a lot of help to us and a lot of video footage throughout the month of May. WRTV, WTHR, WISH-TV all helped greatly in helping us put these programs together. There is the countdown clock. There's less than 10 minutes to go before the final gun sounds, and qualifications will be over for 1987. Rick Miskiewicz is on the racetrack.
This is an all-or-bust run for Miskiewicz because there is no more time. He won't be able to get back in the line even if he waved this off. He has already hit the car against the inside wall on turn 3 earlier on this month. He has never had the speed in this car yet to make a qualification run.
Gary Lee has an observation from pit road. Gary?
Apparently, there's a search on right now for Sammy Swindell. We had a gentleman come down from the North Pit area, said, "Have you seen Sammy?" I said, "No, why?" I said, "Well, we think we have a ride for him in the second leader card entry. That would be the backup to Randy Lewis." I said, "No, I haven't seen him," and he took off for the garage area. So if they can find Sammy, and if time permits, the two-time King of the World of Outlaws may have a shot at bumping himself back into this year's 71st running of the Indy 500.
Well, that's interesting. We also hear that Phil Kruger may be in line for that car, so we still have drama being played out. Rick Miskiewicz's first lap is not nearly fast enough. It's 196.9. Larry Nuber.
Oh, Bob, a lot of people have been saying that we have a shortage of drivers this year at Indianapolis, and to that end, the name of Howdy Holmes has come up because Howdy has been here at the track each of the last 2 weeks. And as a matter of fact, about 2 hours ago, I know that his name was brought up in a discussion with the leader card people as a remotely possible candidate. Howdy has been here and has been approved to drive, but not this year.
And one other driver that we mentioned when we first came on the air as a possible candidate to get into the field was Tom Bigelow. Now, that required... Oh, he looked like he got a little squirrely coming off of turn 2. That was going to require a refresher test for Tom Bigelow since he has not been in a race in the last few years, and he just ran out of time. So Tom Bigelow will not be able to make a qualification attempt. 197.1, that's still considerably slower. It's going to take to bump Steve Chassis out of the lineup. Chassis' 4-lap average is 202.488. They probably, Derek, will let him take it because they're out of time and
they have no other choice. All this talk about drivers jumping into different cars, I'm glad that's not me because it's a difficult job to come here to set one of these cars up, to become confident with it, and to push that car over 200 miles an hour. So I think it's almost a dangerous thing to do for USAC to let a driver jump into a car that he's never sat in before.
196.172 as the speed continues to drop off. And Rick Miskiewicz no longer is a threat to bump his way into the starting lineup. Now, the field average for the 33 cars right now, 207.194, and that's 3.2 miles an hour slower than the 1986 average. The checkered flag goes out, but Rick Miskiewicz will not be able to get his way into the field, at least right now. So let's go down to Larry Nuber, who's with Steve Chassis.
Well, right now, Mr. and Mrs. Steve Chassis. Wife Gina is also joining us. About 6.5 minutes to go. It's looking pretty good.
Well, let's hope it holds up, Larry, because, you know, that was our third attempt, and there was nothing else we could do. We went for it, and I drove the wheels off it and used Lloyd Ruby's line in all the corners. And didn't get the grass like he used to, but I was afraid to get that low, but did what I could, and let's hope that we got it.
We've heard the emotion from Steve, Gina. How about you? That must have been a trying day for you also.
I'm a wreck. Look at me. I'm a wreck, really. It's the most trying time I've ever been through in my life.
What about last night? I mean, last night at this time, everybody was very much searching. What did you and Steve discuss last night? Anything at all about trying to qualify for this race?
His confidence last night was back up where it belonged, and he knew that today he was going to put it together after a bad night the night before.
The confidence was back up last night and this morning, and right now, more confidence.
Yeah, well, I have plenty of confidence that we did all we can. Let's hope we have enough confidence to last out these last 6 minutes.
Now down to maybe 5.5, eh, Bob?
That's right. The clock continues to tick off. Steve Chassie, at the moment, will start 33rd in this year's 500-mile race at 2:02.488. The clock continues to count down for the time trials at Indianapolis. Back at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where we have just over 4 minutes now remaining before the gun sounds and qualifications will close for this year. Now we are exactly at the 4-minute mark. Once again, let's review the starting lineup for those of you who are keeping charts and will be prepared for a week from today in the 71st running of the 500. On the front row will be Mario Andretti, Bobby Rahal, and Rick Mears. The second row, A.J. Foyt, Roberto Guerrero, and Dick Simon. In row number 3, Ari Luyendyk, Johnny Rutherford, and Michael Andretti. Then in row number 4, Emerson Fittipaldi, Ludwig Heimrath Jr., who's the rookie starting furthest in the field, but not the fastest rookie qualifier, and then Rich Vogler. In the 5th row will be Jeff McPherson, Scott Brayton, and Jeff Brabham. In row number 6, Gary Bettenhausen, Danny Sullivan, and Fabrizio Barbaza, another rookie. 7th row, Gordon Johncock, Derek Daly, and Al Unser. 8th row, Tom Sneva, Al Unser Jr., and Randy Lewis. Going in row number 9, it'll be Kevin Cogan, Jose Legarza, and Stan Fox. In the 10th row, Tony Bettenhausen, Davy Jones, and Pancho Carter. And finally, in row number 11, it will be Ed Pym, George Snyder, and Steve Chassie. Let's go to Alan Massengale, who has been with us throughout the month of May, doing little features from various parts of the racetrack.
We're here in Gordon Johncock's garage. You can see the white marks with the black lettering. They're taking the black lettering off because this car is going to go to the painter. They're going to redo it in powder blue and STP red, reminiscent of 1982 when Gordon Johncock won here. You can see his helmet right here. Those are the basic colors that this entry will have when the painting is complete.
So the painting is going on in the garage area, but not much activity here on pit road, as I think we are finished for 1987 time trials. We'll be back to wrap it up in a moment. The Master Control Tower at Indianapolis with the scoring pylon to the left, and we are just about to wrap things up here as the field is full for this year's 500. And our time trial reports have been brought to you by GOT, where ideas take shape, and by AC Delco. Stay ahead of trouble with AC Delco parts. We'd like to remind you that there is a lot of auto racing coming up this summer here on ESPN, live at 2 o'clock on May 25th. That's a Monday. It'll be the IMSA Camel Grand Prix from Lime Rock, Connecticut. Once again, our thanks to some people at the Speedway here and ABC Sports. And Sports Center with Chris Berman and Tim Brando coming up. And then later, it'll be hockey, the Stanley Cup playoffs. For Derek Daly, Larry Newberg, Gary Lee, Alan Massengale, this is Bob Jenkins. So long, everyone.